before we open it up for questions, is to walk you through a journey very quickly. I had this professor who kept telling me in grad school that you will have no idea where you're going to go if you have no clue where you've been. And to me, that was a fairly powerful statement. And I want to start off and take you with me through this amazing journey of why we are all here today. And to me, it's incredibly fascinating that as a species, we're all here today and we're talking about the most incredible things, right? The absolute fascinating things. I want to walk you through the most unheralded, innovative stories that you would never have heard of. And that story really began about 3 million years ago. I mean, we were no different from any of the other species that existed. But there existed a few catalytic changes in the form of the first sets of innovation that allowed us to really migrate out from that branch and end up being this uniquely dispositioned species that do all these fun and fancy things that we do today. And it really started off with 3 branches of the hominoid species, and I'll walk you through that very quickly. Planet Earth, when about 3 million years ago, had 3 billion species. 3 billion. There were 30 types of what possibly could be Homo sapiens, 30 hominoid species. Do you guys know who Lucy is? Lucy is the first human fossil. This is the mother of all of us. This is innovation, right? If this didn't exist, this, by the way, is the first discovered human fossil. It could be argued that the first mother was somebody else. But this is historically curated, the first Homo sapien. If this didn't exist, none of the stuff that you heard today would have existed. How did this come about? These were the actual tools. The hammerstone from Wango in China was 3 million years ago. This was a piece of rock that this chimpanzee called Lucy took, possibly, made it a pounding stone, and started pounding on things. That was the first ever piece of innovation. And I don't think it gets the credit that it deserves, because minus the hammerstone, minus the hand axe a few million years later, and minus the what's called the stone core tools, none of us would be here. The very fact that I can communicate to you in a language and hopefully you get it, started here. This was the first innovation. The second big innovation, and this, by the way, is recorded. This is a amazing piece of history that's actually recorded. The first wheel, the first ever wheel, was the next big innovation. And if you think about it, not much has changed from that wheel to the wheel today. And this was about 8,500 years ago, 5,500 years ago, 3,500 BC. Now what's happening, I don't know if you've kept track, is the population of the hominoids on planet Earth vis-a-vis the rest of the species. So we've now jumped to 5 million people at this point. The prior slide I skipped, but there was a point in time when the human species was down to 20,000. From 20,000, we are where we are today, but it was as low as 20,000. Immediately after that, we had the first nail, and these are actual nails. Let me go back a second. The first wheel, by the way, was called the Ljubljana Marsh wheel. It's got to be much more famous than it actually is. The first set of nails were discovered in Egypt, the bronze set of nails, and there's been really no change if you think about it from then till now. The population of Homo sapiens has significantly jumped. The first printing press was another piece of innovation. The population of planet Earth significantly jumped up because this gave birth to literature and creative writing. And keep in mind that while the rest of species on planet Earth continues to do what they do, we are now taking off as a human race. We're able to communicate, we're able to print, we're able to disseminate that information, we're able to do transportation, supply chain has kicked in. Telecommunications, in 1876, the first telephone. And that ticker keeps going up. And these are the innovations that led to the spawn of human civilization. The first healthcare innovation was a quasi-discovery/innovation in the form of penicillin. The human population is now 2 billion. And that's significant. That's a significant jump in that short span of time. So if you've kept track, we were less than 1 billion till the 19th century. And from the 19th century till now, we're beginning to really take off. Any electronics and electrical engineering professors or students here? This is a very, very powerful slide. This is the traitors 8 that came out of Fairchild Semiconductor. They don't get the credit that they deserve. They split from Shockley, the first semiconductor company, arguably in 1957. These 8 guys went on to form, they split, which is why they were called the traitors 8. They were quote-unquote traitors. I'm going to read out the names: Julius Blanc, Victor Greenrich, Jean Hironi, Eugene Kleiner, J.L.S. Gordon Moore, Robert Noyce, and Sheldon Roberts. These guys formed fascinating companies, including Intel. Every single one of them gave birth to a fascinating company or a fund or a company leading to a fund. This was probably arguably the closest or the most recent form of electronic innovation that gave birth to a bunch of other things that we see today. This gave birth to the transistor. The transistor, for those of you who are not familiar with it, allows us to do a whole bunch of switching, which really means millions of little devices in a single chip. Without a chip, you don't have a device. Without a device, you don't have a phone, you don't have platforms, and the rest of the other wonderful speakers that you heard today. So this was a fascinatingly unheralded story of 8 gentlemen who were all PhDs who went on to do fascinating things. The population of planet Earth at this point in the late 50s is about 3 billion. Fast forward to now, we are in the gig economy. You heard a lot about the gig economy, the sharing economy, etc. Now, I put this in red because the population of planet Earth is 7 billion, and we are at 1.25 billion. A typical, and that's red because we are now in deep doo-doo. I don't know if you guys heard last week about the talk that was given by Stephen Hawking. You guys familiar with what he said? So according to him, thanks to pollution, migration, urbanization, lack of resources, human beings will not last more than 1,000 years at best. That's what innovation does. You can keep on innovating, but you get to a point where there is a point of no return. And we're very, very close to that. This is a slide of the water shortage in the world. Our country is the reddest. Unlike solar, there are a lot of things that you cannot create. Water is one of them. It's a life form. The reason I want you to see the slide is if you look at the gaps that you see here, the energy gap, the food gap, rural versus urban innovation, gap in terms of density of population, these are all terrifyingly scary numbers. How did we end up here? We ended up here because we innovated. And this is scary, right? A lot of times when people talk about climate change, etc., this is what it really means. Which really means that we have only 10 more generations left and we are done. So in the large scheme of things on planet Earth, we are very close to not going back. So why am I stitching all this story together? Now I want to talk about Teja, which is what I do. A lot of incubators, accelerators, venture capital funds focus on what allows for return on investment to come through back to their stakeholders. Quick show of hands, how many of you are familiar with Teja? Okay, not bad, thank you. We are based out of Hyderabad. We are the largest incubator in the country. We're very, very curative. We focus on go-to-market. We focus on sectors that are relevant to this slide, and I'll show you how. We're only 1 year old. I'll quickly walk you through some of these fascinating pictures of our building. This is in Hyderabad. This is in India. We've touched over 2,000 startups. 2,000 in a year. We have 217 startups in our building. We have over 1,000 entrepreneurs in the building. And there are 3 things that we do. We are an incubator. We are the largest incubator in the country. We have an amazing platform, which you see on the right side, which Satya spoke about very eloquently this morning. We allow startups to get curated and come to the top. And we also have a fund. Oops. I'm missing a slide, but fundamentally what we do is we focus on 6 sectors. We look at agri-tech, we look at sustainability, we look at transportation and logistics, we look at social technology, etc. And these 6 sectors hopefully will change and impact the life of people that you see around you. There are 2 entrepreneurs here who, if you were here in the morning, Raja from Gayam has built this amazing pedal assist ride bicycle, which was discovered by us for Uber. And for all of you who think Uber is an asset-light company, here's a kid who's actually made a sale to Uber, and they've actually purchased these bicycles. I think it's outside, and you guys can take a look at it. We have another entrepreneur it's a fascinating story, who has niobium magnets that stick on top of a ceiling fan, and as the fan rotates, it generates energy because he's developed a device which can harness the electromagnetic field from around it. That's a long-drawn sentence. That kid is 14, 1-4. And he's right there, Chandrasekhar. So, yeah, kudos to both of you. Roger's right next to him. This is what we do. We take these guys to market. And we want to try and solve some of the problems that we have. But now it gives you a sense of how, and T-Hub is an amazing journey where entrepreneurs, the government, academia got together, and we put together all these pillars. So instead of taking you through the questions that I had prepared, I'd love it if you guys open up and ask the three of us questions on anything that you'd like. And we'll keep it down to 4 or 5 questions in the interest of time. So let me open it up. I'll force you to do an 8th inning stretch if you don't ask me questions.